It started during the summer break when our parents had flown out of town for a week-long conference. I was 18, just finishing high school, and my sister, 20, had just returned home from her university for the break. We'd always been close in a weird, not quite normal way. Not exactly affectionate, but always connected. She had a way of talking to me that made me feel like I was being pulled into some inside joke I didn't quite understand. That week, we were alone in the house. It was quiet. Too quiet sometimes. At first, everything seemed normal. We ate meals together, watched TV, did our own things during the day. But something shifted. I began to notice her eyes lingering a little longer than usual, especially when I walked into the room without a shirt. I thought I was imagining it, but then came the teasing. She would make strange jokes, offhand comments that felt off but wrapped in enough sarcasm that I couldn't challenge them. "Bet you've got nothing special down there," she said once, laughing, but staring dead at me. I tried to laugh it off, telling myself she was just being a weird older sister. But the tone in her voice stuck in my head. She'd never said anything like that before. It wasn't playful. It felt like a test. That evening, we were sitting at the dining table. She had her laptop open and was working on something, while I scrolled through my phone. Without looking up, she said, "You ever think about how different we are from other siblings?" I asked what she meant. She just shrugged. "I don't know. We just get each other." The words made my stomach tighten. I wanted to say yes, but I wasn't sure I did understand her. Lately, I felt like I was seeing someone I didn't really know anymore. The next day, I was heading to the kitchen to grab a drink when I saw her standing in the hallway, leaning against the doorframe of her room. She was in her oversized shirt, no pants. Not unusual in our house, but the way she looked at me wasn't the same as before. It was deliberate, like she wanted me to react. I avoided eye contact and brushed past her. Later that night, she asked me to come to her room to help fix her Bluetooth speaker. I walked in, and she was on her bed, scrolling on her phone. The speaker was sitting on the floor. I bent down to pick it up, and she laughed. "You always walk around like you've got something to prove," she said. I didn't get it. "What are you talking about?" "You know, acting all grown, all man." I said nothing. Just tried to connect the speaker and get out of there. But then she said it. The sentence that I still hear in my head when I try to sleep. "Why don't you show me your tool, since you're such a man?" She didn't laugh this time. She just stared. I froze. It was like all the air left the room. I stood up, looked at her, trying to find any sign that she was joking, that this was just some twisted sibling teasing gone too far. But her face didn't break. I walked out of the room without saying a word. My hands were shaking. I couldn't believe what I'd just heard. I didn't even want to process it. But I knew everything between us had just changed. The next morning, I avoided her. I stayed in my room longer than usual, skipped breakfast, didn't respond when she called my name. I thought maybe if I ignored it, it would disappear like it didn't happen. But it had, and the weight of it sat in my chest like a stone. My mind kept replaying it, the way she said it, how calm she was, how there was no trace of embarrassment in her voice. It wasn't just what she said, it was how intentional it felt. By afternoon, she acted like nothing was wrong. She knocked on my door, told me lunch was ready. Her voice sounded cheerful, casual. I hesitated, but hunger won, and I followed her to the kitchen. She made grilled cheese sandwiches. No conversation. Just music playing from her phone. It felt staged. Like she was controlling the mood on purpose. I couldn't eat. She looked up at me mid-bite. "You good?" I nodded. Said I was tired. She smiled slightly. "You're acting weird." I didn't respond. I didn't know how to. I wanted to scream at her, but part of me still didn't know if I was overreacting. Was she messing with me? Was it a sick joke? Did she expect something? Later, we were in the living room. She sat too close. Her thigh touched mine and I tensed. She noticed. "Relax," she said. "You're so jumpy today." My voice cracked when I spoke. "Why'd you say that last night?" She looked at me like she didn't understand. "Say what?" I stared at her. "You know what?" Her eyes held mine for a second too long. Then she laughed. "I was joking. Jesus. "You're so sensitive." The dismissiveness hit me harder than her original words. It was like being slapped with silence. She turned her attention back to the TV, unfazed. I sat there frozen, feeling small. She didn't deny it. She didn't apologize. She just minimized it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how she looked at me, the confidence in her voice. I thought about every moment in the past where I'd brushed off strange interactions, times she touched me longer than necessary, comments she made about girls I liked. I thought she was just being protective. But maybe she wasn't. Something inside me shifted. I started questioning everything: who she really was, what kind of relationship we had, and whether she saw me as her brother or something else entirely. I wanted to believe it was all in my head, but the more I tried to rationalize it, the worse it got. It wasn't just a joke. She tested me. She said what she said with intention, and when I didn't play along, she made me feel like I was the one who was wrong. I didn't feel safe around her anymore. Not because I thought she would hurt me, but because I realized she had the power to twist things, control the narrative, make me doubt my own memory. That scared me more than anything. From that moment on, I stopped trusting her. The days that followed were silent in all the wrong ways. We barely spoke. I avoided being in the same room as her. If I heard her footsteps in the hallway, I shut my door. If she called my name, I ignored it. She never brought it up again, not even a hint of what happened. That made it worse. The denial, the pretending, the erasure. Like it was some passing thought she could discard, but I had to carry it. I started feeling sick. Not physically, but something deeper. Shame crawled over me like it belonged there. I couldn't focus on anything, not books, not my phone, not even the games I used to drown out boredom. My chest stayed tight, like I was waiting for another moment to drop, something even worse to happen. But nothing came. Just silence. She acted normal. Smiled like she used to, cracked dumb jokes, asked about my friends. But I couldn't match her energy. Every word felt forced, every glance a trap. I kept second-guessing myself. Was it really that serious? Did I overreact? But the sick feeling never went away. It told me something real had broken. I started keeping a journal. Nothing fancy, just thoughts scratched down when I couldn't sleep. I wrote about how her eyes didn't match her voice, about the tension I couldn't name. I wrote the words she said, word for word, over and over until the ink started to fade. I needed to see it written to believe it had happened. I couldn't tell anyone. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't even know how. What would I say? That my sister crossed a line I can't define? That she asked me to show her something no sister should ask? No one would believe it. They'd laugh, tell me I'm reading into things, say, she's just playing. But I knew the tone. I knew how it felt. One evening, I saw her texting someone. She laughed, blushed, covered her phone when I walked by. I didn't ask who it was. I didn't care. But it struck me, she could be normal with others. She could flirt, connect, date. Then why mess with me? Why plant confusion where there should be trust? That thought poisoned every memory. Even good ones started to feel wrong. I remembered when she used to cuddle next to me during movies, and now it made my stomach turn. I remembered her calling me cute when I was younger, and now I wondered if there had always been something off underneath. I wasn't angry in the explosive sense. It was more like a slow burn. Resentment curling in quiet corners of my mind. I resented her power. Her ability to move on without consequence while I was stuck in this fog. I didn't know what to call what happened. It wasn't assault, not technically. But it wasn't harmless either. It left a mark. It changed how I saw her, how I saw myself. I couldn't look at my reflection without feeling like part of me had failed to protect itself. And I knew now, whatever we were before, we weren't that anymore. I stopped trying to make sense of her. There was no answer that would undo what had been said, no explanation that would make me feel whole again. Something had shifted permanently, and I couldn't unfeel it. I went quiet around her, not out of fear, but out of clarity. I saw her now for who she really was, and there was no going back. She noticed the change. Asked why I was so cold, why I barely looked at her. I gave neutral replies. Shrugged. Said I was just tired, distracted. She didn't push, but I could tell it unsettled her. She liked being in control, liked having influence. Losing it bothered her. One afternoon she asked if we could talk. I nodded. She said she felt like I was pulling away. Said she didn't want our bond to fade. That we'd always been different. Always had a connection no one else understood. I listened. Not because I believed her, but because I wanted to hear what lie she would tell next. She mentioned that night vaguely. Said, "I know I said something that made you uncomfortable. I didn't mean anything by it. It was a joke." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. My silence told her everything. Then she added, "You're my brother. You know I'd never cross a line like that." That's when I realized she wasn't sorry. She was just scared I might say something. Her words weren't about guilt. They were about damage control. She needed me to believe the story she was rewriting, but I wouldn't. After that conversation, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront her again. I wouldn't argue or beg for truth. I'd just detach. Not dramatically. Not with anger. Just slowly, completely. I stopped confiding in her. I stopped laughing at her jokes. I stopped trusting her with any part of me that mattered. I started planning for college with a different mindset. Before, I thought of it as an adventure. Now it was escape. Freedom. Distance. I needed to rebuild my understanding of what safety meant, and it couldn't happen in a house where silence protected the wrong people. Packing my things was easy. Leaving wasn't. Not because I'd miss her, but because I knew part of me still wanted her to take responsibility. But she never would. She'd keep living in her version of the story, one where I was dramatic and she was misunderstood. As I walked out that door, I didn't say goodbye. She called out my name, asked if I'd text when I arrived. I said sure without meaning it. Now, months later, I still haven't. I think about that moment sometimes. About how betrayal doesn't always come from lovers or strangers. Sometimes it comes from the people who claim to know you best. I don't hate her, but I don't forgive her either. There's a version of my life where none of this happened, where my sister was just my sister and I never had to question her intentions. But that version doesn't exist anymore. And I've accepted that.